Let's just start there. 12 teams, because it used to be 4. Some people want 8. Tony Petiti might want 14. What do you think about the number? Because when I first heard it, I didn't like it, but I've really come around to it. And as we start this season, I kind of think it's perfect. What do you think of 12?
I don't love it. I mean, I think they're going to realize that it's kind of silly in that the 5, 6, 7, 8 get a home game and 1 through 4 do not. I think that when we see that actually happening, people are going to kind of revolt against that. I would, if it was up to me, if I'm put in charge of college football for a day, I'm just going 8. I think 8 puts all deserving candidates in the field. It is enough to introduce a little bit of chaos. And I would like a guaranteed seat for the G5, like we have now.
So I like that you get 4 first-round buys and you have to win your conference championship to get a bye. That puts an emphasis on the conference championship.
I do like that.
Which puts an emphasis on winning in your regular season.
And conference championship weekend
is going to be humongous. Huge conference championship weekend, especially for the teams that lose. You know, are you going to fall out of that top 11 or where do you fall down to? So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think seeing it happen in the video game has like adjusted a lot of people. Like if you've gone through dynasties at all, have you been like, oh, had to like kind of recalibrate how I like.
Yeah, let's hope the committee does a better job than the College Football 25 AI on ranking and seeding. It's getting weird. I think that's going to be coming in a patch on the game. Hopefully that will be fixed, because the ranking system is kind of all out of whack. It always was a little bit weird, but this year it's especially wacky. So, I think the video game, honestly, with a lot of the changes that we're going to talk about today, the video game has helped kind of soften the blow of like the jarringness. I can't remember, if we were playing a game or if I was talking to Sam about it, but I was saying, literally just playing this game for, what has it been now? 2 weeks. Like, I expect a 2-minute warning, and I feel like there's going to be a line of demarcation when the season actually starts for people who did play the video game and didn't.
Yeah.
When the 2-minute warning comes up, people are like, wait, what? And they're like, yeah, what are you talking about? Of course there's a 2-minute warning, even though we've literally never had it in the sport before. So I'm kind of neutral on it as a rule change, but as an adjustment, there's no question that the video game has kind of prepared us for this sort of new reality.
Yeah, so we've got first-round games on the higher seeded campus. Got 1 on Friday, December 20th, 3 on Saturday, December 22nd. And the NFL has decided to go up hard against the college football playoff. They were not happy about that Saturday. So the NFL put Texans Chiefs at 1 p.m. on NBC. CJ Stroud and Patrick Mahomes, followed by Steelers Ravens on Fox at 4:30. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they schedule those 4 games. Do you put the 5-12 G5 game on that first game on Saturday morning, because you figure primetime Friday night's going to be important?
Yeah.
That would probably put it up against Texans Chiefs, or at least partly up against Texans Chiefs. So I don't know. How do you think college football and the NFL going head to head there?
I tell you,
weekend is going to be.
I think they'll figure that out. I think that there's, NFL is king, but I do think that there's a sense that these games are, 1, novel, and 2, more important than a Week 17 game that sort of may move seeding around in the NFL. I mean, I like both. I don't know what the numbers necessarily are. I'd be curious if we had like a nationwide poll of this. But in a lot of ways, I think the NFL fans and college fans are sort of distinct. And I think the question is what the casuals do. Do the casuals want to see Patrick Mahomes versus CJ Stroud? Will that take precedence? I'm very curious. I kind of think they're just both going to probably have lower ratings than they would be if they were certainly standalone. It feels kind of silly in some ways, but I also don't put together the NFL schedule. So maybe I'm missing something. But
so it'll be interesting. There will be no year in which we do not have controversy in the final CFP rankings. Every single
because that 4-5 cutoff is going to be controversial. The 8-9 cutoff is going to be really controversial. And I don't even think the 12-13 is what we're really talking about. Probably the 11-13 is what we're actually talking about, because 12. I think this is part of what I think, like, I want the G5s to have a seat at the table. Not everybody agrees with me, but I generally think that it's Unfair, literally un-American, that if you win all your games, that you aren't allowed to at least continue playing for a championship. So I like that. That said, I think the thing that people aren't talking about enough is the reshaping of the G5, and that a lot of the best G5s, your SMUs, your Houstons, your UCFs, your Cincinnatis, are not G5 anymore.
Correct.
Like, you look around at who is actually in the artists formerly known as the G5. I don't even know, what are we calling them now, Chris? It's a little confusing now.
Well, technically you don't have to call them anything, because the group of five was what the idea was. The Power Five have guaranteed access to the New Year's
we can go back to the non-AQ. How about that? Let's go back to the non-AQs.
Well, the problem is now everybody's AQ is essentially what it is.
Yeah.
I've maintained, hey, like mid-major maybe, but they don't like that. I've thrown it in my group of five quiz every year. Most people are okay with group of five, even if the administrators really aren't. But that is a real concern there, especially with what happened to Liberty last year and not being competitive with Oregon. They are worried that if that happens, especially this first year, when we know after the season, the Big Ten and the SEC are going to drive the way into what the playoff looks like in 2026 and beyond, however many teams are in it. The deal for 26 and beyond does include 5 championship spots. The group of 5 does have a spot moving forward. But if the group of 5 completely falls flat on its face, when you're probably playing a Big Ten or SEC number 2 there, there's going to be sentiment of they shouldn't have this spot, or we need to bring in more teams because they don't deserve to have that spot there. And it's definitely going to happen. And so you're right. Houston beat Florida State. UCF beat Auburn. Memphis played Penn State really well. Tulane beat USC.
You look at the quality of athletes that UCF was putting out there against Auburn.
The team was loaded with NFL players.
Yeah, exactly. You look at some of these teams that have done this and won on big stages. I mean, there's not very many out there. Like, Boise's still hanging around, but Boise has never done this. The Boise rarely lines up with teams and just can go athlete for athlete, with a lot of these Power 5 teams that they have played. When they play, a Virginia Tech in an opener, or like a middle of the road P5 team, they're going to go toe to toe with them, sure. But that top end talent, we'll see kind of what that looks like. So it's going to be really, really interesting. But I think that's one thing people aren't talking about enough, that I still want the G5s to get there. But the idea that, the G5 is going to be competitive every year, I can see a world in which there are some butt kickings that are taken because they're not quite, to that same level that the G5s once were. I mean, Cincinnati is a really good example. That team that made the playoff, there's a lot of good players on that team. They had 2 NFL corners on that team, right? Kobe Bryant, Sauce Gardner, some pretty good players. Desmond Ridder was a first-round quarterback. Who was the running back on that team? I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. Either way, they had a bunch of good dudes.
From Alabama, yeah. So it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to make the fall just so much more interesting when we get into November. How many teams are in the mix? Yes, certain games aren't going to mean as much because of Jerome Ford. That was the running back.
Oklahoma transfer, is that right?
Alabama transfer, I think. Shout out producer Cam for getting that name. But so we've got quarterfinals this year. The quarterfinals are the Fiesta, Rose, Peach, and Sugar. And I think it's important to keep in mind these bowls are still tied to the conferences. So your 1 through 4s are going to line up with those, as well as the semifinals are going to play a role, because the Orange Bowl and the Cotton Bowl as the semis. These bowls.
Quick revisit. This is stupid. Yeah. This is stupid that we're still going to do the conference ties with the bowls. It's stupid.
Well, it's because the contracts go for 2 more years. We're getting the 12-team playoff before the end of the 14 playoff contract. And so
stupid.
So if Oklahoma is your number 1 seed or Texas is your number 1 seed, the Cotton Bowl is going to be the semifinal on Texas's side, regardless of whether or not Texas gets there. If Florida State is your number 2, the Orange Bowl is going to be over there. Like it's still tied to location for the semifinals. It's still tied to conferences for some of the quarterfinals, just in terms of which bowl game they go to. It doesn't determine the matchups. It just determines that where these things go, because these bowls need to know ahead of time what pool of teams they need to be in contact with and preparing stuff for. So I think that's like, it's a little thing, but I think when we get to December or late November, fans are going to be wondering like, hey, we're going to the playoff. Like, which bowl game might we go to? That's all going to factor in. And by the way, the playoff contract for 2026 and beyond, it's not fully signed yet, but it is going to continue the current setup with the bowl games in the second round and onward. So even if we love home sites in the first year, and we probably will, even if we have a weather issue at one of them, it appears that's not going to change moving forward, which is
money talks, Chris. We'll see.
We'll see. Well, yeah. National championships in Atlanta this year. Nothing different there, but the game is Martin Luther King Day and Inauguration Day.
I don't think I put the Inauguration Day together. That's interesting.
Yeah. So
I'm sure it'll be fine.
I'm sure it'll be fine. Nothing will go wrong in Atlanta on Martin Luther King Day for the presidential inauguration. So keep an eye on all of that stuff's going on.